During the auditions, did he let anybody else talk either?
No.
Thank you, Brian.
I have no comments, Sandra.
All right, why don't we take the next question? How about that?
This is you, man. Front center. You're famous. Hello. I don't think these guys need introduction, so I'm going to step away. And it's Q&A, so there's a microphone here. You can ask whatever question you have, and you might answer them, right?
Yeah, he will.
Boone will answer them. Okay. So we'll explain it for the 8-1 call then. All right. So we have arranged our contestants in order. So season 1, right? And we have 2 from season 1, right? Boone, you're building with bricks now. Do I dare try? Probably not. Do it. We're building with bricks now. No, I have no career. You need to get your ears fixed. All right. Mark Cruickshank here. From season 2, Jen Smart. Susan Earls. And Moto. All right. I know this. I'm going to give you a microphone so everybody can hear you show. All right, have at it, guys.
Well, if nobody's at the mic yet, there's a mic right in the middle of the audience here, and if you have any questions, we'll do the best we can to answer them. But for as long as no one's at the mic...
I have a question. Who's your favorite team from season 2?
Christian!
That's right, I've asked you enough questions already. So, I've always wondered, you have your iPads in front of you as you're building, and I know they always show your sketches, but like...
They're a Microsoft Surface Pro.
Excuse me. You have an electronic sketching tablet in front of you. Were you allowed to use like internet reference as you were building? So like, let's say you're building an animal like a chameleon or something. How do you know what a chameleon looks like off the top of your head?
So they disable the internet connectivity on the devices. There are no points of reference. You either have it memorized or you guess.
Wow, that's impressive.
Sometimes we would use the Microsoft Surface Pro, hashtag not sponsored today, to do drawings to inspire our builds. But Mark, pretty much every episode, would find a moment to sneak away with the Microsoft Surface Pro and write some inspirational message to me. Like you're awesome, or keep building, or we're the best, or something like that. And since there's no one at the mic yet, I got to tell the one that was my favorite was when C3PO was there, and we were under a lot of stress, and C3PO said to us something like, "You haven't." What did he say? It was like you haven't come this far to give up now. And the fact that C3PO said that to us, then Mark wrote it on, "You haven't come this far to give up now, C3PO." And that to inspire us for the rest of the build.
I didn't like using that thing at all, so that's why I just wrote little notes.
When you do a 14-hour build, do you do it all in one day or over multiple days?
Do you feel like you're allowed to? Okay. We are.
Okay, this question was, do we have to build all in one day, or
Can you repeat it louder?
In one day. So most of the builds were probably, multiple hour challenges, 10, 14, And so we did get to break those up into more than one day. You know, the camera crew would go home, and so, you know, hopefully we got to go home at that point.
What was that guy's name? Cameron, thank you for your awesome question.
All right, this has been fun.
Okay, I have a question for you. Tell us about your shirts.
My shirt is black.
Oh, look, Susan's
short
wearing one
sleeve.
too. Look, there's 3 of you with the same shirt on today.
Now, this is special.
All the other bigger building people are like outside. Oh, right here.
If you're wearing one of these shirts, raise your hand. Raise your hand. Jake, raise your hand.
I mean, who
Okay.
has the best beard, though?
He was the model. Aubrey. I'm the one that used for the shirt.
So we heard about the 14-hour days. Has that changed the way you guys build now? I know normally you spend months thinking about how you're going to put together your mocks. Has it changed how you do that?
I haven't. I actually have always built my mocks fairly last minute. Generally for a convention. Most of the creations I've ever made are in this size range, and I tend to spend about 4 hours on them. I have a big blue castle in Castle. It's got 3 towers and a tree, and I started that last Tuesday. So that's kind of how I've always built. So I don't know that it changed, but you got to understand that on the show, it is unlike anything else. The pressure of the clock, even if I'm gonna build something in 4 hours or something in 10 hours or something in 7 days, the pressure of that clock being on, and all of the other pressures of talking to Will, talking to the Brickmasters, the production being there with the cameras, and story, kind of trying to draw out our experiences, all of that while we're also still trying to build. It really is unlike anything. I hope I answered your question. Was that Damon? Thank you, Damon.
I definitely build faster since the show. I used to spend a lot of time making decisions, and I make my decisions a little bit faster now. I am enjoying taking my time to do what I want to build, but I definitely found that I'm moving along much faster.
So even before getting on the show, I used to spend a lot of time. Senator, the answer to your question is honestly, a lot of us go home and we start sorting because we realize the power of sorting elements in the brick pit. And and the other thing, like she said, is faster. I think just a lot faster. I've always gotten more efficient, and with more techniques, you always get a lot faster in what you're able to do. So one mock that took me 200 hours, I did a similar mock 3 years later for one of Boone's Bell Challenges, and it was done in a week and a half. So it's just practice, and then there's also little tactics you use like modularity, repeatability, mirroring things, using common repeatable elements on the show. It's a really great boot camp for being a more efficient person to execute things. But one consistent thing I've heard from a lot of people is they don't have the energy to build, so they sort. But also they're inspired to sort their elements into a way that makes them more efficient to build mocks, rather than just a jumbled pile of stuff and you have to search for everything. That's one thing that really helps if you want to be a bit faster, is taking all of the time when you're uninspired to just do the mechanical sorting and storing of elements in a way that enables you to build better. Thank you for your question, Senator.
I've also discovered that my 10-year-old enjoys building repetitive stuff. So if I can incorporate some repetitive modules in an interesting way into a creation, I can build 1 or 2 and hand them off to her and be like, hey, can you make more of those? And she's like, yeah, I'm on it. And she loves it.
Yeah, I believe a lot of windmills and things in my buildings were built that way.
By a child labor?
Yes, by child labor, by the people in the front row.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sam?
Yeah.
Sam is at the mic. What's your question, Sam?
Do you get to keep the things that you build on the show?
No. After we're done building them, we get to move them around and they take pictures, like real fancy, beautiful video pictures and all kinds of stuff. And then we leave and never see them again. Yeah, they blow most of them up. So
They like destroyed our stuff. So no, realistically, with the exception of some custom animation that's done later, all of the models are deconstructed so the elements can be sterilized for COVID and for our production, sterilized and put back in the brick pit. Otherwise, there would not be enough elements to continue doing challenges.
I will say, if we got to keep our sets, we would be a little more reluctant to blow them up. I was going to, yeah. So at first when they said, you're going to we're going to explode your sets, I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh wait, it's not my Lego. Sure, let's go. Let's blow stuff up.
I've also learned that Jamie Berard, Brickmaster Jamie, does not appreciate the destruction of Lego. So what does he call it? He calls it, no, it's like something like pyrotechnic deconstruction or something like that. Because it implies that you can still use some of those pieces to build more things in the future.
Well, I'm going to quote Indiana Jones.
Most of them get obliterated.
I'm going to quote Indiana Jones till the end of my days. All of those builds should be in a museum. That's how I felt about everything on the show. It was just amazing to see everybody's builds. So it belongs in a museum.
So I do have a fun story. I pulled a burnt brick in our first challenge out of the brick pit that had been done from season 1, and it was unusable. So I turned it over to the brick pit guy, and he went, noted. And I think there were some regs put into place for our explosions to ensure that would not happen again.
I found one too, and if I had had pockets, I would have kept it, but I didn't.
You didn't have pockets and I did, but I turned my
To follow up on that a little bit, if you had been able to keep one of the builds, which one would you have kept?
Well, I personally would have kept the explosion challenge build, episode 2, because it was my favorite. But obviously, that one had to be destroyed. Not ready yet.
Mark said all of them. I think
I would, our droid from Star Wars Challenge, because we had, which no one ever saw, we actually had like 8 remotes all put together, and to remind ourselves like what every remote did and every button and everything, Boone would build like little like symbols. So we had like minifig legs that meant like it's gonna drive forward, like that's the legs, but it drove, or like the torso, he put a minifig torso so that we could sit there and we knew exactly, man, that thing was so much fun. I remember like Tyler and Amy and Sam and Jessica, they're like showing theirs, and we're sitting behind our podium playing with it, and we'll kind of look, so our droid's like moving around, like looking, like doing stuff, and we'll just kind of side eyes, like, and then he did that.
I see what you're doing. That one would be near the top of my list. I think Pop's Food Cart Challenge and Artopia, Pop's Food Cart Tower, sorry, and Artopia would be builds that would display very well at a show like this. So those would have been fun to keep, but I don't know how we would have gotten them home. I guess build a crate.
Talk to Moto about building a crate. Do you know what you want?
I really like the hat, pre-runway.
If I could have kept one, I think, let's see, we've destroyed like 3 of ours on set. I probably would have kept the hanging brick challenge just because I loved how the roots looked. I loved the balloons on that one. That was a technique I created on set. And so that just looked really cool. We'd have to find a way to hang it though. You're gonna need help with a crate. Another question?
Yeah.
What's your name? Tell us your name.
Yeah, my name is Kayla, and I really love Lego. And I'm wondering, like, in this sorting, if you're looking for one specific technic brick, like, where would you go and how would you do that?
Are you talking about our own personal brick or brick on the show?
Oh, no, on the show.
Okay.
Technic brick would be on the right-hand side. It would be in the right corner, 3rd shelf down, twice back.
Okay, that's weird because it's like exactly where it was on our season 2. So that means there was at least some consistency.
I mean, one problem we did have though, when those Technic bricks went, they went quick because people really wanted the larger ones, and they were, I don't know if you found that out, but they were hard to come by.
So just so you guys know, the set, when these guys were on set, was in LA, and they moved the whole set to Georgia. And so they did it exactly the same way, rebuilt it and all in Georgia. It was really amazing.
So I'm going to give these guys from season 1 a hard time by giving them a brick pin answer. The dots elements are located on the left-hand side in the corner on the top shelf. The drum lacquered gold elements from the Monkey Kid set are located on the back left side, 2 shelves down, 2 across, I think.
We didn't have any of those things in season 1. That's why he's telling us.
But at the end of the finale of season 1, Brickmaster Amy did come over to us and say, "I've got this great new line coming out, and I really wish you could have had the parts. Can't wait till you guys get to see it." I think she was talking to my daughters because they were there. They were like 8 and 5 at the time, and they had a precious little connection with Brickmaster Amy right after the finale ended, and she was telling them about how excited she was for them to see her new line, and Dots was announced like the next month, and they got to build with them.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi, Megan.
I have a follow-up question to that one. Did you get a tour of where all the parts were on the first challenge? Did you have to find out where everything was as you built it?
Well, maybe season 1 was different than ours, but we actually had a book. It was a book as well as on the Surface Pro, but it was really hard to navigate. I mean, there's so many parts. It was impossible. You just had to learn it. No, we did not get a tour. Okay, we got a 30-minute intro, but I think most of it was learning it, seeing parts, figuring out where they were, and trying to memorize that.
The book and the catalog that showed us all the parts was only available to us while we were on the clock. None of us took the time to find out where all the parts were. So basically it was like open, figure out where everything's at, and then say, "Guys, do you remember where the turntables are?" Well, but we were all so helpful with each other. It was great. It worked great.
Season 1, we had a book, just like they had, except for our very first episode. They arranged the brick pit a certain way. They gave us this book. The only person that actually studied and memorized that book was Manny, and he knew where everything was. He would just sit there, because we had our books nonstop. He would sit on breaks and just memorize everything.
That's one thing we had that they didn't, is we were allowed to consult the book off clock.
Did you guys ruin that for us?
I think Manny probably did. Because, no, so then that was episode 1. Episode 2, right before we started filming, they mentioned, oh, we moved a bunch of stuff around in the brick pit. So then we had to rediscover where everything was.
And if I remember correctly, there was a delay between the change and the book update.
Yep.
So we had to do some building before they were able to get the new books printed. And was that as soon as that was episode 2? I thought we had more time to learn the first brick pit before they changed it, but who knows?
Speaking about the parts, so we had like 5 million brick. You guys had like 3 million bricks. But anybody in this room...
Wait, does that mean 2 million were dots?
Maybe. It's true. So if anybody in this room has ever had to make do with whatever Lego they have in their Legos collection, that right there is a Lego master skill. Because when we would say, oh, what piece would be great here? Let's go get a super long Technic, and you run to the drawer and everybody else had drained all the Technic and there was none left. Now you get to use that skill and say, what parts can I use instead? And there was a lot of that substitution going on when we would run out of parts or when parts were put back into circulation. So don't let the large numbers fool you. And don't say to yourself, oh, you know, I don't have that much to build with. Perfect. Build with what you've got, because that is a Lego master skill.
I agree with that.
When I saw the hanging brick challenge, I've got the floating display. I saw that and I freaked out. What was that like to you? Because when I saw it, I was like, I've done that before. I know what that's like. What was that like to you? How is that different from what you're used to?
Well, I think most of us would have never encountered that, outside of a competition. So, who would have thought we would be building floating in the air? But it did present its own set of challenges. You had to plan for weight and balance and, the fact that it would just kind of spin when you didn't need it to, and you're trying to place bricks. So, I mean, it was different, but we managed it.
You don't get to answer that. Yeah. Yeah, you have a question going on.
How do you get on the show?
I'm not sure we completely understand it.
That's true.
And what do you all feel like you're allowed to say about that process?
Well, we can say a few things. Instead of answering that question for everyone, how did you get on the show? Let's try that.
They, somebody reached out to each of us. Was it Raph? So one of the casting, I don't know his official name, but they've got a casting director, and that person has basically, TV industry casting professionals that are freelance people that just work for the season, like the portion of the production that involves getting the cast. And as soon as the cast is set and production starts, those people go start working for another show, in most cases. So Mark and I each received a message from one of those people, and ours was Raph, on Instagram. But you know what? Maybe I should go back. The Comic-Con story is a good story, right? So I went to Comic-Con. I went to Comic-Con in San Diego in 2019. Is Joshua Hanlon in the room? Oh, he's making a video.
I saw Josh somewhere.
They're like John and Josh are over there in the red shirts making a video right now.
They're doing their job. Boone, leave
anyway,
them alone.
I was there with them, and Joshua was giving the keynote. Not the keynote. Joshua was emceeing a Lego kind of like digital media panel. So you had like digital graphics designers. No, that's the wrong art. Animators for Friends and Batman and the Jurassic Park one, and then there were people behind some of the other things. Anyway, when they got to the end of that panel, and it was a pretty big room. It would be probably like if this whole area was just seats. And I was in that audience, and at the very end of the panel, they said, by the way, we have a special announcement. Lego Masters is coming to the United States, and the website is live now to go audition, to go submit your audition. And so as I was walking out the door of that panel, I called Mark, and I said, Mark, do you want to apply for Lego Masters with me? And he was like, absolutely. Which is how Mark says that word. And
absolutely.
Okay, anyway. And so then we started just kind of planning, because there's a lot that goes into, you have to fill out a big form, you have to submit a bunch of pictures, you have to submit video, pictures of things you've built, descriptions of all kinds of stuff. It was like a 26-page application form online. And so we just started kind of planning that, and it took us about 3 weeks from that date to like kind of get all our stuff together to apply. But during that time, that casting guy reached out to both of us on Instagram. So they've got people that are just like on the ground, pounding the pavement, trying to find people that they think could be good for Lego Masters. So it happened both directions for us. We applied. When he reached out, we were like, yeah, we're gonna apply. And he's like, okay, all you need to do is apply. Not to get on the show, there was still a lot more to do, but he's like, there's nothing more I can do for you at this point, just submit that application. And then we had like a Skype interview, and maybe 2 Skype interviews, and then a long time passed, like 6 weeks or something, and we didn't hear anything, and we were texting each other every day like, are we just, like, did we get ghosted? Are we just out of this? And then out of the blue, they were like, hey, if we wanted you to come for an in-person kind of audition, would you be available on these dates? And we were like, yes, and then we did that. And then a couple weeks later, we were like flying to LA to start the show. And the weird thing was, I had a friend who was on King of the Nerds. My friend Kayla won. Did anyone watch King of the Nerds on TBS back in the day? Yeah, we got a couple people. My friend Kayla won season 2 of King of the Nerds. So I'd heard a lot about the behind the scenes workings of what they call unscripted TV show. You all probably know of it as like reality TV, but and we were not aware when we got there whether we were really on the show or not. It wasn't until basically like they started taping episode 1 that we were like, well, okay, I guess we're like actually part of the final. Because I'd heard examples of, if they're gonna have 10 teams, they might fly 13 teams down and choose at the last moment which teams are the best. They didn't do that with our season. But they maybe, we don't know. We don't know.
We can't comment on all of that
So
at this point.
I had heard that some shows did that. So we literally didn't know until the day the first episode started airing that like, I guess this is the actual cast. It was weird.
So
and we didn't find out that Will Arnett. I'm sorry, we didn't find out that Will Arnett was the host until the day we flew down. We were making speculations, and I thought it was going to be Terry Crews because he had been posting some Lego stuff on his Instagram shortly there before. But I was just so floored it was Will because I love Will Arnett. Okay.
we can't talk from application until being on set. So barely, so it's a little bit weird. But one thing that's interesting that was different is they learned from your experience. So the first time we learned we were on the show. I remember Horace and I were doing an interview, and the question that came at us was, so how does it feel to be on season 2 of LEGO Masters? And we answered the question, and we left the interview, and we walk out the door, and we're like, so when will we really hear that we're going to be on the show? And the guy said, no, I just told you, you're going to be on season 2. Because I had heard Boone's story, and I thought we were being punked and tested. And I had taken that to heart, like they're not really going to tell us until we walk on stage. But they had learned that it was best to let people know as soon as they possibly could, and to get us mentally ready, prepped, and then get ready to start the shooting. And it was pretty cool. Because I thought they were joking. I was like, he's like, no, I just told you. And we're both like, oh my God, he said, you should have done that in front of the camera.
All right, Brian, you have a question?
Hi, yes, my name is Brian.
It's Brian. Everyone knows Brian.
Hi, Brian.
This is specifically for Jen and Susan. So I know as contestants, you're really good friends. And I've also heard you have to be able to kind of bicker and fight sometimes. Can you role play some of that for us? Like,
Jen.
even stand up and there you go.
Jen, you are taking way too long. Thank you, Susan. I'm not sure that they want us to actually like bicker, but they definitely want fierce personalities, meaning you can hold your own space. So if somebody has a suggestion for you, how do you handle that suggestion? Can you negotiate it? I don't know. So I don't know that Susan and I ever have bickered. We get along quite well, but that doesn't mean that we agree on everything, but we can both hold our own ideas and defend our own ideas, and then we come to an agreement. And so I don't know that we would be as entertaining as just some drama queens out there, but that's just not us. Yeah, I feel like they really wanted more from us in that department, but we just didn't give it to them.
Brian, I know you directed that just at them, but I feel like, don't you feel like we could talk about that? Am I allowed to talk about that?
Sure. Well,
Mark, there were these moments.
So, I was told by Cody and Steve when they tried out and they didn't get accepted, that they asked them to like bicker and fight, and they couldn't really do it, like during the interview process. And so they didn't feel like they would be a good fit on the show, even though they're good builders. So, but right before I asked the question, you said you couldn't talk about that. So, but I am interested to know, like, kind of from season 1 at least, did they ask you stuff like, well, let's see you fake fight or anything like that?
Did they ask us to bicker and fight in the audition? There was just, I don't remember them ever asking us to, I will say, I don't remember them ever asking us to do anything that like wasn't, except the one time with Mel. Can I tell that story?
Can I interject real quick, guys? The better beards win. That's all I have to say.
Whoa.
You guys. You're the
Whoa.
better beard.
Okay. Yeah, wow. Those are strong words in this. Okay. Well, sometimes Mark would be like, "Trust me." That was about the most intense Mark got. Is that fair?
The big thing with our season, I'm pretty sure you guys are going to say kind of the same thing, is they had to keep reminding us that we're in a competition against all the other builders, because as soon as like we took a break for lunch or something and they stopped the clock, we would immediately go over and be like, "This is so awesome! You guys are doing such a great job!" And producers are going, "You guys are in competition with them," but we're like, "God, great job!" Like, and they hated that because they had to remind us, like, you know, there's $100,000 on the line, and like, these are your enemies, and we're just like, no, these are just Lego builders. We're having fun. Like, yeah, I don't know. Did you guys have that kind of the same thing?
I'll speak for me. So they did change, I think, our season a bit. So Anthony, who's the guy who basically oversees like the production of everything going on there, he was interviewed recently. And he goes on to say that there are reality show competitions now that are wholesome in the way that they don't want the contestants tearing each other apart. So they want conflict, but they want that conflict to arise from the challenges themselves and people being put under the weight of that challenge, rather than having the contestants producing drama by tearing each other apart. And that Lego lends itself to the latter category of a challenge competition, where I think they looked at season 1 and they realized that the interpersonal conflict was not resonating with the parents and the AFL community. It was the wrong take on it. Not the wrong take, but a take that wouldn't be as well received as if we had a bunch of builders who supported each other, but also understood the reality that everybody was going to, or someone was going to go home every week. So you see that, I think, in our season where there's not really a bad guy team. There's teams pretending to be bad, and it's a trope that they're leaning into rather than just, like they said, having, I think they accept it, but the AFL community is not deconstructed. It's not organized that way. And even if they tried, we didn't fall into that trap, and we weren't going to fall into the trap. Very early on, we, as the 12 teams, pretty much had a pact that if they try to suck you into that hole, you ignored it, divert, and support the teams even harder. And they would learn from that response. That is the proper way in an AFL community to play well, in my opinion.
So I'm going to tell one more story right before you ask a question. Okay, I'm sorry, we'll answer your question in just a moment. I have to be careful about the words I choose for this because it's sort of similar to the piece of the audition process that they're not allowed to talk about, I think. But I'll just say that, like, in the process of getting to the show, before the cast was selected, there were some organized build challenges with other people trying to get on the show in the same room. And we had a certain number of hours to do a build challenge, and I think we had it was a 4-hour build challenge, and we're building, and everyone's furiously building, trying to get on the show. And we got to the point where there was 1 hour left, and I said, 10 minutes! And everybody freaked out. And so when the show started, they kind of took that and they're like, do you kind of have fun like messing with the other teams, like in sort of a playful way? And I'm like, yeah, you know, we can do that. It became, so the one thing I said, it didn't really ever seem like they asked us to do something that was not sort of natural to us. There was a time when Mark and I were building the Timbertown roller coaster, and we had fairly quickly built the tallest structure in the room. Aaron Christian's Ferris wheel was still laying down on the side at that time. So we had the tallest structure in the room for a while, and then Mel, their theme park was like the Faro Sands, and he built an obelisk that was like 8 studs by 8 studs, or 6 studs by 6 studs, and like 3 feet tall. He just like built it up really fast. And they were sort of like, what do you say you kind of go over to Mel and tell him what you think about the obelisk that he's built that now is the tallest structure, even though it's only a few studs wide. And so we kind of went over there, and we're trying to kind of give Mel a hard time, and we were saying like, we see your obelisk. It's obvious. We were trying to do this like kind of play on like obelisk and obvious, like it's obvious to us what you're trying to do here. But I think Mel, and I promise I would say this if you were here, I think Mel was mispronouncing obelisk when he would say it back to us, so that joke didn't end up in the final cut of the show. But it was this really kind of precious moment where we were trying to be meaner than we really were, and we became very fast friends with Mel during the production and Jermaine, and we always have the "isn't it obvious?"
Well, I think we might have a little bit of a loophole here because we can't talk about season 2 casting. And you can't talk about season 1 casting, but we can talk about season 1 casting because we were there, Susan and I. And I don't think they ever asked you to like turn it on when the camera came around because these guys were on the build table behind us for our build auditions. And when the camera came by, they were like talking and animated, but when I build, I'm like quiet and concentrating, right? And Susan too. And so when the cameras came around, we had to like try, okay, the cameras here, yeah, this is awesome. They want you to vocalize your thoughts. Yeah, so that was like a little bit different for us, but these guys like had it really, really easy. And so it was just naturally part of their personality. And so we had to like, that was an accommodation we had to make sure that the viewer could see what we were thinking. The viewer could enjoy what we were building. And so that was a little bit of a change. So I think they were trying to draw that out of some of us, but you didn't need that.
Mark didn't have it easy. He was trying very, very hard and doing a good job at trying hard.
And you know how Boone just like randomly busts out in song when he walks into a room? Yeah, he was doing that during his auditions as well, and he would sing, and like people around the room would start picking up and singing along with him.
Under pressure.
During the auditions, did he let anybody else talk either?
No.
Thank you, Brian.
I have no comment, Sandra.
All right, why don't we take the next question? How about that?
Would you make copies of the builds he made?
Would you make copies of the builds from the show?
Would we make copies of the builds that we built on the show so that people could see them here? Is that kind of what you're asking? Like, would we build them again?
Would you build them again? Would you build them again so that you could have like a version of it in your home?
Yeah, that's a good question. We were actually told we were not allowed to do that. So, and honestly, like, it would be impossible. Like, if Mark and I wanted to build a Pop's Food Cart Tower, we could come up with some approximation of what it was, a version of it, but, you know, it would definitely be very different, but we're actually not allowed to do that. And I don't remember if I was allowed to say that or not.
No, so, yeah, exactly. It's impossible to replicate the scale and volume of the pit. So we talked earlier, like, I always like to say that the pit doesn't have breadth, it has depth. So don't think of it as like a shallow lake where it covers every possible element. They don't have anything that's been retired, so on and so forth. So what it does have is the basics in incredible depth. It's like an ocean, where it very quickly gets very deep. So a lot of these builds, there's just too much volume to replicate at home. What you will see instead is if you follow the cast members on social media, you will see them making micro-scale versions or builds inspired by the builds that they made. You'll see people building, for example, little workable puppets, or you'll see them building, I'd say mock-scaled versions of what they liked because they enjoyed what they built. And then alternatively, for folks like me, I am building a one hanging brick challenge at home because I knew it was coming, but I won't talk too much about that. But also when I saw it on the show, I always wanted to do a challenge like that, so I sat down and said, dagnabbit, I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to ignore a clock. I'm just going to do it the way I do it, regardless of whether it takes me 150, 200 hours. And then I'm going to bring it to a convention at some point. So hopefully that helps answer the intent of the question, which is we do get inspired. People are building versions of what they built on set, but they're not replicas. You know, they're appropriately scaled to what you can accomplish.
So, after being on the show, how has all the things you learned and the skills and how has being on the show and being popular among the Lego fans affected your personal life?
I mean, outside of this kind of a venue, I don't know if there's a whole lot of fame going around. Yeah, not getting recognized in the grocery store or anything. Maybe a little bit, but
It's fun getting recognized at Walmart, right? But anytime we go anywhere Lego themed, like to the Lego store or to a Lego convention, we get recognized, and it's a lot of fun because people who come up to us are just as excited about Lego as we are, and so it's fun to have those conversations. But we're not really having to get security bodyguards or anything like that because we're not having the crowds press on us. So it's really fun. I know, unless you're Moto. No. But as far as like the experience on the show, it's changed the way I build, but I don't think it's really changed social aspects very much. This is fun.
I live in Portland, Oregon, and I can blend in really well because I have a beard, and I usually wear like a beanie and a flannel shirt, so I am just one in a million. But when I go out to lunch or something with Boone or go to the Lego store, then people put two and two together and figure out who I am and who he is. But that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Why are you gesturing to me?
I was with Boone. I did not get recognized. Boone gets recognized. And it's partly because he has an incredibly unique voice, so regardless of the mask or his look, people will hear him first and recognize he was from the show, and they'll come over and say, "Are you Boone from Lego Masters?" And he said, "Yes, and Moto's here from season 2. He was very kind. But no, for me, I don't wear a lab coat, I don't wear the bold prints outside, so I've been recognized once in public. And like these guys, unless it's a Lego context, I'm not very recognizable other than it's a guy with a mask. So, yeah, what's great is you can have a normal life and not be recognized. I call it niche famous. You are niche famous. You have you're not Will Arnett. You've got a very small segment where you're noticeable. And it's kind of nice because you have a private life and you're on public and no one recognizes you, and then you come here and you get recognized and it's cool. So, yeah.
see, I think we have time for another question. Do we not? Okay.
Well, we've all seen the amazing builds that you guys have come up with, but I'd be curious to know kind of how your personalities and talents complement each other as you're doing those builds.
Well, I will definitely say this. Susan and I are alike in a lot of ways, and we're also different, which in some ways made our team really, really strong. I am definitely gung-ho, and I want to go and do it huge and take all the time in the world. And Susan's more calculating and, hey, let's dial this back, let's do it. I'm the gas, she's the brakes. And we needed both of those in the show. And so we played off of each other really, really well, respecting each other's strengths and complementary skills as well.
Mark and I, do you want to talk about that? I feel like you get.
I've talked too much already. You need to speak up.
Mark and I really, Lego Masters was actually pretty unreal to us how, because we've been doing a lot of building together, right? I would say we had built a lot of collaborative mocks before Lego Masters. And we knew a little bit about each other's strengths and weaknesses, knew that, you know, whether it be like Mark, I believe Mark Cruickshank can build big things faster than anyone else on our season. He can just like start putting bricks together, and then you're like, what is that? And then when he's done, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally get it. And so like maybe for me, like some challenges, it might have been more of a like if it was a technical thing to figure out, like with motors or gears or the app or whatever, like we would kind of lean into that, but we would sort of go back and forth, and we would trade, and we would constantly just like really lean into each other's gifts and know our own limitations, right? And we grew a lot, I feel like, during the show.
Yep.
Is this the last question? This is probably the last question. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so this is a question for Boone. I've seen you before on like Beyond the Brick and stuff like that. So how does that work? Do they like ask you to come or stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I owe a great deal of my sort of dive into the LEGO fan community to Beyond the Brick. I met them at one of the first fan conventions that I attended as like a builder, and we just kind of geeked out on our connection over our interest in YouTube. And it was shortly thereafter that they just reached out to me. They looked at my YouTube channel and they were like, hey, we like some of what you do. Do you want to do some, do you want to be a contributor for Beyond the Brick? And so I've done some work with them, and they've done the same thing for a bunch of other wonderful creators. Right now, Kirk is contributing a lot for them. Brian, Brickslopes is contributing a lot for them. Go check out their contributors. I do less with them as I've been busy with other things, but I still absolutely love those guys. I kind of hope they can hear me out of their left ear right now.
Tell you what, why don't we all stand up and start clapping and looking in their direction?
I think they're working right now. They're literally like filming a video, so let's not bother them any more than I already have. But they're great. Watch Beyond the Brick, and check out all those contributors, because they all have, like me, it was a great launching. Hey, everybody, we're going to give a round of applause to John and Joshua Hanlon from Beyond the Brick. So yeah, they were great, and a really incredible part of my LEGO journey. Can I turn around and take like a selfie of all of you, of us, and all of you behind it?
Wait, we can go now?
No, they want to take a picture.
Cheers, guys.
Alright, so that concludes our panel discussion for now. We're going to give them a couple of minutes, because they'd probably like a break in the bathroom and get a drink, and then they're going to come over here and we can do some signings and some meet and greet. So if you guys want to queue up, there's the blue ropes here. Queue up there, it's on the opposite side.
Watch out, Moto's running.